Hey, everybody, and welcome to How to Make Films and Influence People with Peter and Andrew, where we talk about our own approach to screenwriting and filmmaking. We discuss great works of cinema and blasphemously imagine how they could be remade. This week, we'll be talking about Whiplash, giving an update on our current screenplay project that you, the audience, has been contributing to, hearing about, asking about. First of all, I'm Peter, successful filmmaker, film professor, and screenwriter. And this is Andrew.
Screenwriter, filmmaker, but not a chemical engineer by choice.
We wanted to just briefly update people. Our screenplay is coming along. We're excited about it. I'm excited to share more with you, the listeners, as we get further into it. But this is a comedy with some good action into it, and we've spent a lot of the time thus far writing kind of the setup, a lot of the relationship parts of this, and now we're getting to the part of the script that there's a lot more action, and that's, I think, kind of fun to write, and thinking about all the different big action, active, cool stuff you're going to see on screen. Okay, but we do have a question. This is a question coming in from Quinn. Let's see. The question says, love the podcast, love hearing about great films and what you've been watching, but what I want to know is, what about your least favorite films? What about the films you absolutely hate? Any ones that come to mind? And I think that's a great question. We could talk longer, I think, about that, but it's a question of what are our least favorite films.
I mean, there are some films that I started watching and I couldn't finish, so that they would probably be up there. But I can't even remember what those are anymore. But I think one I'm thinking of, like, a famous movie that most people love that I just don't like, and one of those movies is The Wizard of Oz. I know people love this movie, and for me, I just cannot stand watching this movie. I think it's weird and I think it's creepy, and, like, there's something about the way that they do those, like, the guys in the costumes and the whole everything is just a little off, you know? I don't know what it is about it specifically, but there's something off with that movie. I am just not on board with it. Anytime I feel like I'm, like, forced to watch it. I'm like, nope, this just whatever this is not for me. Even though I've seen the but I know other people love that movie. So, I mean, that would be one, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I don't have that reaction to it. It's not my favorite film, but I could see a strong reaction to Wizard of Oz. But for me, it's hard to say. I would say I have walked out of a couple films, but they're not even like good stories. I walked out of a movie called Boys and Girls starring Jason Biggs. That's just
Never heard
not
of this.
worth my time. But if you've paid to see a movie and then you leave and actually go home, that's saying something about what you thought about the quality of a movie. I think this would be a fun thing to revisit, come back to some of our least favorite films and why. But when a little bit of recency bias, both based on what you just said and on having recently seen it, but Wicked, not my cup of tea. Not,
So you watched the Wicked movies in theaters. I haven't even seen them in the
I
movie
saw
yet.
the first one. I did not go see the second one, but my
Yeah.
my wife and I were going out to the movies. The movie we wanted to see was sold out, and Wicked was available, and we were like, we weren't that interested, but it's a big movie. Boy, oh boy, I did not enjoy it for so many reasons. So that'll be another day. We could talk about all the
You
different, and
were
I know a lot of people love it.
yeah.
Everyone in my family who's seen it, except my wife, agrees with me, but everybody else loves it. So I don't want to pick any fights there, but not my cup of tea.
You were familiar with the music though beforehand, right?
A
Had you seen,
little
like,
bit,
the musical?
not an
Uh,
aficionado of the music, but I was
you've heard it.
familiar
So
with the
is it
big hits.
are you a fan of musicals in general and just not that one? Or are you pretty much can you think of a musical you like?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like The Sound of Music. I
That's a great
like
one.
La La Land. I
Yep.
like
So it's not
Once.
just
I don't.
musicals.
They're different kind of musicals. No, I don't have a problem with that. I think it's well, yeah, a few. I would have to take a little more time to sort of gel on why I don't like it, but I think also it is a little bit of anticipation and expectation. And I think if I had discovered this unheard of movie called Wicked, maybe I would think it was better. but knowing how much people like it and me not enjoying it, then I feel like I have a stronger reaction. So I like to think of myself as strong-willed and independent, but I am influenced by the opinions of others. Sometimes to the contrary.
If somebody loves it and you're like, I don't get it, then it's like, nope, I hate it now.
Yeah,
I got to go against the current on this one.
I remember when Titanic came out, I saw it and I thought it was great, and I was like proudly thinking it was great. I didn't realize that every girl in America would see it 10 times, but I had heard like all of the production problems that went into making Titanic and how it was going to be this big disaster and it was going to lose so much money for the studio.
Hmm.
So I came out of the movie being like, "No, that's surprisingly good."
Yeah.
And then and then it turned out that everyone loved it. It's like, "Oh, I need to."
Expectations low.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's
you
a
got
great
to.
question, and that I think it's worth thinking about. Why don't you like what you don't like, just as much as why you do like what you like? So I think we should revisit that idea.
Yeah. We could do our, yeah, the worst movies that are highly rated. That could be a fun one.
Oh yeah, most overrated. Yeah, because I mean, it's not very fun. There's a movie starring Rutger Hauer, he's like a blind samurai swordsman called Blind Fury. I'm like, it's not a good movie, but I don't think anyone thinks it's a good movie.
Yeah. You're not arguing with anybody about this.
Yeah. So write in if you loved Blind Fury, but otherwise, just keep writing in, and we'd love to hear from you. What movies you love and hate? Which movies are overrated? So thanks for writing in, Quinn, and we will keep you updated. And now, Andrew, before we get to our actual film of the week, Whiplash, what have you been watching?
I started watching the new season of Fallout this week. I don't know if you've heard of this show. It's on Amazon. I watched the first season when it came out about a year ago, and I really liked it. I thought it was just a great show. Really enjoyed the tone, the style of it. It's based on a video game, which I've never played. And I will say, I don't think you need to have played this video game or know anything about it to enjoy this show because they do a good job of giving you this information as you need it because it's there's a lot going on here. This whole world is very developed, and so you kind of get this when you need it, and you pick up how things work pretty quickly. It's post-apocalyptic in the future, but the twist is that they're kind of all stuck in like the 50s and 60s when it comes to technology,
Mm.
except for these nuclear devices that so they have these very powerful energy sources. They can power any machine, they can power buildings, these vaults, anything can be powered, but it's like a period piece in that everything is kind of taking place in the 50s and 60s with these old style phones and food and the advertising. And so it's got this fun twist that I really like. It was future, but also kind of past. So it's like an alternate future. Um, it is a little bit violent, I would say, but in a fun way. It's like a fun western. I would say the style of it, but it's just I've only started the first few episodes of this new season, but picked up right where it left off, and I'm having a really good time with this.
Great. Fallout. I haven't. I think maybe I saw the first episode of the first season, but I haven't watched it. But I'll give it another shot. Great. And I recently watched the film Train Dreams,
Mm.
which I thought was really interesting. There's a book that I'm familiar with, and I read part of the book and didn't finish it. But seeing the movie, I think it's a really interesting movie. It's sort of about a man. Uh, it's a man in time. So he's starting off as like an orphan, or he's kind of raised by family, but he doesn't even know who his parents are, and he just sort of has this life where he isn't really grounded into anything, and it's sort of about his pursuit of meaning in life, even without a lot of the structures that we normally look to. And but it's a very there is a voiceover and there is dialogue, but I'd say it's a very visual film. It's a lot about his life and experiences, and he gets into logging and building the railroads in the late 19th century, and then he's living into the 20th century. It's really interesting. It's there's an interesting part of it is that he has a wife and child, and some some bad things happen there, and you would think that that would be like what the whole movie is about. Like we've seen a lot of movies where that is going to be such a dramatic part of the story, and it really is one episode in his life. And it's an interesting sort of dramatic choice there, that it's not that this whole movie is about his one relationship. The movie is about his life trying to find meaning in the universe, and that's just one episode in it. And
Mm,
so yeah, I mean, it's not a rip roaring good time, but it's also not really depressing. There's sort of depressing
mm.
aspects to it, but I'd say it's a really interesting, thoughtful film. A little bit of contemplation about the meaning of life and where we find meaning in our day to day lives, and I thought it was definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, that one looked interesting. It looked like it would be a slow melodrama type movie. Maybe that's, I guess, kind of what it is too. But if you're in the mood for that type of thing, you know, that could be
Yeah,
a good one.
and beautiful scenery, which is not the be all and end all of drama and story, but it is, it's nicer
That
than
helps.
looking at a white wall.
It does help when a movie is just looks beautiful. You're willing to put up with a lot more if that's the case.
Yep,
Go
absolutely.
slower.
Absolutely. So we got Fallout and Train Dreams. I think some good ones to check out. Sort of different evenings. Maybe not
Very
the best
different.
doubleheader, but
Yeah, different ends of the spectrum there.
and we'll be right back after this.
We've been asked to read some testimonials about Dunkin' and Bliss ice cream.
Oh, really? What are people saying?
Well, here's one from Margaret in Ohio. I ate Dunkin' and Bliss ice cream and then got promoted at work. Coincidence? I think not.
Wow. Here's another from Brad in Texas. Dunkin' and Bliss ice cream helped me parallel park for the first time. Now I believe anything is possible.
And Susan in Vermont. After trying Fat Boy Butterscotch, I can subtly understand what my dog is thinking. Turns out he loves watching Bachelor in Paradise.
And here's one from Mike in Florida. Dunkin' and Bliss ice cream gave me the confidence to call my ex-wife and tell her I'm doing just fine without her.
Way to go. And finally, from Jennifer in Oregon. I used to be lactose intolerant, but Dunkin' and Bliss ice cream convinced my digestive system to make an exception.
These testimonials are 100% real words spoken by us.
Dunkin' and Bliss ice cream. Are you ready to see what it can do for you?
And we are back. Okay, so let's get into it for our film of the week, Whiplash. Andrew, what can you tell us about Whiplash?
Whiplash, 2014, Damien Chazelle. Under the direction of a ruthless instructor, a talented young drummer begins to pursue perfection at any cost, even his humanity. This is basically a two-man movie, I feel like. It's Miles Teller, J.K. Simmons, and they are just going head to head this whole movie. It's a very tight story. There's not a lot of fluff to this. It moves fast, which I really like and appreciate about this movie. Um, but it's kind of held up over time. That seems like a very simple story that a lot of people have resonated with and has ended up being really influential. I feel like if you've seen this movie, you know it's like something you have to talk about. You know, like, oh, did you see Whiplash? Like you have an opinion about this movie, even though it seems at its core a very simple story. But there's a lot more to it behind, I guess, the core story, which is very quick and kind of a fast moving story to watch.
Yeah, we get into it right away. And I've got to say I love Whiplash. I really enjoyed it the first time I saw it. I've seen it a few times and I enjoyed seeing it with a new eyes this time. I really like it. But we get right into it. And so J.K. Simmons is the Fletcher, he's the teacher, kind of conductor of this band, or yeah, sort of like the jazz band, or the
They're called
he's,
oh, what is
what do they
the
call it?
not the
He's in a
stage
musical conservatory in New York, and it's called Schaefer is the name of the school, and it's supposed to be,
studio
it's a
band.
fictional place, but it's supposed to be like the top school for music if you want to be a jazz musician.
Hmm.
And J.K. Simmons is this tyrannical, abusive leader who uh, Miles Teller is sort of promoted into the main band at the beginning of the film. And then it's both this great honor to be there, but you're also going to be abused and yelled at and belittled by J.K. Simmons in his supposed pursuit of greatness. He's trying to push all of his musicians to be great, and he's gonna just abuse them to get
Mhm.
them there. That's his ethos anyway. And I've got so many thoughts on this film, but what did you think of J.K. Simmons as a character?
Okay, so this is my second viewing of this. I remember watching the first time. First time I watched it, thinking he's clearly the antagonist here. I don't like this guy, and he's kind of the cause of all of these issues. But watching it this time, I really see it as he's just the other side of the Miles Teller coin. Like those two just belong together because Miles Teller needs or is like at least looking for what J.K. Simmons offers. Miles Teller looks up to this guy, and even though he gets mad at him, like he's looking at what he has to offer. And so I think this J.K. Simmons character, he's not this like, I guess he's mean, but he is what he says he is. So he tells that story in the beginning about, how he threw a symbol at somebody and it changed his life. And that just describes like he's willing to do that. He's not lying about it. When he calls you names, he's trying to make you a better musician out of it. But that's just his whole goal. And he doesn't ever sway from that. And so I kind of like at this time I look at him and I see this is a guy that you choose to have in your life or you don't. But if you do, there's just natural consequences to that. And as a result, you may get certain benefits and rewards out of it. But I don't really see him as the anti-hero in this anymore. What did you think?
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I've gone back and forth because I think, the first time you see it, he's so mean. But
Mhm.
and I do think, well, and let me say this. This is Damien Chazelle has said as much, and I think it's totally true. This is a sports movie that happens to be
Yes.
set in music. This is a sports movie, and I don't know about you, but I have more of a sports background than I do of a sort of trained music background, and so I relate to it more on that level. And I've had a lot of different coaches, and I look at Fletcher as an abusive coach, and
Mhm.
that doesn't mean you can't learn a lot from him, but
Mhm.
he's not really he's for one thing, he's not being supportive. He's pushing, pushing, pushing. And another part of that is that he fluctuates between being very like it's such an honor to be here. And when he says that you're doing a good job, well, he would never say good job because those are the worst
Right.
words in the English language. But when he gives you any kind of praise, that means so much to you. But then he comes hurling swears and racial epithets and sexual epithets, whatever it is, or literally throwing things at you, and he's coming at you. But it's not just that he's always mean. It's that balance with sometimes his praise means so much to you. I think that's classic
Mhm.
abuse. That's
Right.
usually how abusive relationships maintain, is because they aren't 100% evil all the time. They switch to being something that you really want to have, and so that's an important part of this.
Yeah, and it clearly works. Like Miles Teller is a much better drummer by the end of this movie than at the beginning. And some of the other drummers that are in there actually quit or they get worse. And for whatever reason this works with Miles Teller's character, this is the type of motivation that he's looking for or needs for whatever reason. Even if it isn't like a good way to get this is how he's pursuing it at least. And he seems to agree with the theories when they have that sit down at the end of the movie in the restaurant and J.K. Simmons gives his whole this is why I'm doing it. There's going to be one person that just makes a difference in the world. And you can see Miles Teller's character is like, yes, that's what it's about. And I agree with that. And like, he wants to be that. And so, it's kind of like they're both in it together, even though they clearly butt heads the whole movie. So I don't know. It's a weird dynamic of like, he got better. He ended up doing what he wanted to do, but he also kind of went through hell to get there. So I don't know. It's
Yeah, and I
way to
think
look at
Miles
it.
Teller's character he's not just the victim here, because he really does want, when he hears I'm going to destroy 99 people to find the one,
Hmm.
He is saying 100% to himself, I'm the one. I'm
Yes.
the one.
Hmm.
And I think that is so important. He is not going to be content to just be the 99 who are destroyed. He is going to take this to heart and become the one. And I think it's a really interesting, you could have told a story about this teacher destroying the life of somebody else, but I think
Yeah.
having Andrew, the Miles Teller character here, he's not a guy who's just going to be destroyed by it. He's seeking it out. And I think that's a really interesting, sort of sick, but a really interesting part of the story here.
Yeah. And they do talk about the one. There's supposedly a person who committed suicide who was he taught J.K. Simmons taught at one point, and they kind of blame him a little bit for the depression, anxiety that he brought on. So they do mention, there are casualties along the way. But I guess I don't know the movie's taking a stance per se, but it does seem the two main characters agree that's just part of the cost of doing business. That's just how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I take away from this is I think that there is a value, and so I think the J.K. Simmons character is more correct than you at first think, but
Hmm.
also not as correct as he thinks he is. And I
Yes.
think and I think that's really important because I think he's making a very good point that so many people go through life without pushing themselves and just accepting the good job praise and just move on. And I think if you instead say, I'm going to push you and push you and push you, and you are going to push yourself and you are going to work really hard, I think that is I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think that, like, a lot of times the way that you can be very good at something is by having tried to be great at it. And you
Hmm.
push yourself to be great, you end up being quite good, and that is how you got there. And if you had been content with where you were several steps ago, you never would have gotten nearly as good as you got. But and so that's part of how I think the J.K. Simmons approach can be effective. But I think J.K. Simmons would say that's failure. That
Right.
if you tried to push for greatness and only got to good, you should have quit earlier because you were just a failure.
Hmm.
And I think that's the thing. Like, I think there is some truth to what he's saying, but also it's not the whole truth.
The truth, but not the whole truth. He is just. I think he works really well in this movie because he is so extreme. Like he's taken one idea and just made the most extreme version of it as possible. And so everybody else that comes into play is just dealing with this, one end of the spectrum, which is really fun to see and to watch play out in a movie form. So I think that was a good idea for this movie to be based around a character that's all in on that one idea. Like that one thing is all he cares about. And then everybody else just kind of lives in his world, at least as far as the movie goes. We don't really see them outside of that too much. And then just how they interact with this one idea. If you took this to the extreme, how would it play out? So,
Yeah. There's one scene where he's cycling through three different drummers. There's the Miles Teller character and there's two other drummers, and he keeps insulting all of them. And it's interesting, just to show it's kind of creative, his insults. They're very mean, but it's kind of creative. It also shows he's not he's not homophobic, he's not anti-Semitic, or maybe he's all of that, but he's not insulting people because of those specific reasons. He's looking for whatever he can find to insult
mhm.
people. And he's going to just use whatever weakness they have, whatever thing they're self-conscious about, he's going to use that to get at them. So I think it's valuable in that context to have that scene. But it's also interesting to me. I had the thought, if I'm Andrew, the Miles Teller character, I'm like, it's almost like he's cheating on me by insulting those other people. I'm the one who's supposed to get like those insults. Like, oh,
Right.
I guess all of us are just equally getting insulted. Like, and I think this is part of this.
Mind
in-
games.
It's the mind games. And I'm a teacher by choice, and I am the opposite. And I think that there's a value in a middle ground, but I think I'm kind of the opposite of, like, whatever. All
Yeah.
right, I'm going to present some information. If you like it, great. If you've got questions, I'll answer them. But I'm not here to be your like life mentor and push you to
Right.
achieve all that you can achieve. And that's my approach. People seem to like it, but I also think, like, you're not you're not going to achieve greatness in my class.
Not because of you, maybe in spite of you.
Maybe in spite of me, but it is an interesting approach that, like, that heart, there is a place for pushing hard. And I've found this is something I wanted to talk about. I appreciated my coaches in sports
Hmm.
because I found in other parts of life people were very soft, and teachers, maybe I didn't like the subject material, maybe I didn't do well in a class, but in general teachers have a sort of softness to them. And I found in sports, and I did wrestling, I think you did wrestling,
Yep.
coaches were very tough, and I didn't like it in the moment, but in some ways that was a unique place in my life that I had those relationships.
Yeah, I guess you don't have many spots where you're going to watch an adult that is supposedly in charge of you lose their minds and go into like a shouting match, of just start screaming and yelling. And I had a coach like that in wrestling, and he would throw his clipboard occasionally. He was known to take people into the hallway and give them a real talking to, and we would all just sit there and make jokes about how he's, going to kill them or eat them or something. And just like, you're in high school, you don't know what's going on. But it's interesting to have those types of people in your life, which are just so extreme. And my coach was an extreme as this J.K. Simmons character, but to have an extreme version of that, whereas every other adult in your life is pretty tame by comparison. And there is, looking back on it, you can see there's some value you can get out of that because you do push yourself harder than you otherwise would. I do feel like. And, for better or worse, you can say whether that's a good thing or not. But there is something to it. There's something to that approach.
Yeah, I mean, and I think when you get to J.K. Simmons and what he's saying that's true and what's not true, I think one problem with what he's doing is that we never see him give useful instruction. Like, and I don't know exactly how it works in music, but he's never says, "Oh, looks like you're going a little too fast. Why don't you try doing this instead so that you could keep time better?" It's just yelling. It's just yelling. You're doing it wrong, wrong, wrong. And I'm like, I think a good teacher, if you notice that people are doing something wrong, you should instruct them so that they can do a little better. And I think
Yeah. That's a
but
good point. I
yeah.
hadn't really thought of or looked at it that way, but that's true. You kind of wonder, how are all of these students so good? Like, they seem to be the best. They win that first competition or whatever, and it seems like they're doing really well, but you never see J.K. Simmons teach anybody anything. It's only chewing people out and telling them what they did wrong, which, works to a degree, but you would think there'd be some natural talent there to teach. So I don't know, maybe they didn't show that on purpose, or is that like part of the story to say this is all he has to offer? I don't know.
I mean, I think it could be a little bit of both. And I think that's something I want to get into is what we see and what we don't see, and what we know and what we don't know. And I think that's like, we don't actually know how good Andrew is. And this is something, because I looked into what actual jazz musicians say about Whiplash,
Mm,
and people it, people have some complaints about the accuracy of the experience. People have complaints about, like, this is not how any teacher, like, a teacher might be mean, but this, like, the
yes.
ways in which he's mean doesn't really match up, and there's some things like that. But people basically say Andrew is playing pretty well. They're impressed with how well Miles Teller as an actor is doing with the drumming, and it seems like people say he's not obviously wrong. Like, when J.K. Simmons is yelling at
Right.
him, like, it's not clear that he's doing anything wrong. And I think though it's important for us as an audience that it is ambiguous. And I think that's what's
Mhm.
really interesting about having the movie set in this kind of music world. Like, some people who are professional musicians have an ear for what's going on, and they will inevitably have a different take on the movie than the general public. Just like if you watch a movie about wrestling, it's going to be you're going to have a different take on it than somebody who's never done wrestling would, and you're going to notice different things. But here, I think it's really important that we don't really know how good Andrew is, because if we knew that he really was amazing, then we would say, okay, of course he's just got to push through. This is going to be great. Or we would say J.K. Simmons is wrong for calling him out, and it's clear that J.K.
Mhm.
Simmons is wrong when he says that Andrew isn't doing it right. But if Andrew was bad and we could tell that, then that would be a different story too. And I think there's a real important part of this is that it's not clear to us, the audience, how good he is. And I think that
Mhm.
in many ways replicates the experience that you would have if you were in his shoes. You don't know how good you are. You want to think that you're great, but sometimes you feel absolutely terrible and you just don't know exactly how good you are.
Yeah, the the way that they do it on purpose where they're not showing you other studio bands. They're not really comparing it to, you don't go and see any other drummers other than the three that are in the movie that kind of compete against each other. You don't see other drummers. You don't hear anything else really. He's obviously listening to something on his headphones. You don't know what that is. You don't really have any other sense to compare this to. And even if you do know music, you, like the other musicians in the band that are playing the brass instruments, they don't know if he's on or off. They don't know if he's good or bad. They're kind of just sitting there too. And I like that the moment where they had where J.K. Simmons gets mad at somebody for being out of tune. One of the, I don't know if it was a trombone or a trumpet or something, and they just don't know. No, nobody knows. Nobody knows who's not in tune. And it's, I think that's to hit that point home. Like, they might not be out of tune, just like the drummers may be on beat every time, and this might all be a mind game. That's how I kind of thought of, like, he might just be saying things just to get a reaction, just to motivate people or to push them, because if they're doing great, he still wants to push them. And so there's always, I always thought as like this, there's a question of what is and isn't real. Are we missing something? Are we not missing something? Who's really deciding what's going on here? And it's almost like J.K. Simmons just decides at any moment, you're not doing enough, even if it is right. And so I think withholding all that information and just being, you're only in this scene, you're only in this little world, you don't have an outside perspective, that really does go a long way to help this movie.
Yeah, and I think like if you think of it like a sports movie, you could sub in he's making people run and you run faster, keep doing sprints, whatever. But if you are actually watching people do shoot baskets or hit baseballs, either they're doing it or they aren't, and you can see that as an audience
Yeah.
member, and so you would immediately know, okay, I guess they keep messing up, or I guess they are doing it right. Why is he yelling? And the ambiguity here is really interesting.
Yeah, to not know. That is a good point. I mean, even if a musician would know, but there is some subjectivity to how you're playing and, if it's good or not. I guess it's more like art in a way. So there is some ambiguity there that's just natural, and most people wouldn't know that anyway. So yeah, it does work. It works a little better than a sports movie in that way for this particular story, because it'd be
Yeah,
harder to do this as he's catching the ball or not, he's making it in the basket or not. That'd be so clear that it might be harder to get on board with who these characters are.
yeah. I think there's something to that. I think I had a couple movies that came to mind when I was thinking about this, but um, I was thinking about the movie Vision Quest. Which have you seen
Hmm.
Vision Quest?
I have not seen that one. No.
Oh my goodness, can't believe you haven't seen Vision Quest. It's not that normal people should have seen it, but it's one of the few movies about wrestling, and it's Matthew
Oh
Modine
wow.
plays a wrestler, and in it he there's this whole other romance part of it, but basically he is the best wrestler in the state at his weight class,
Yep.
but there's another guy who is supposed to be better than him in the weight class lower, and so the character Loudon takes it upon himself to cut weight to lower down to the weight class below, just so that he's already the state champion at his weight class, but he cuts weight just so that he can push himself to beat the guy who's supposedly the absolute best.
Yeah.
And it's like
Sorry.
it's interesting in that movie how much like it's driven just by himself. The coach in that movie is just nice. He's like, okay, I guess if you want to cut weight, that doesn't really help us as a team, but whatever. You're
Yeah.
okay. But and then his friend who is in the weight class below is like, okay, I guess you're taking my spot. I guess that's cool. I don't know about that. But it's so much about him being driven by his own pursuit of this feeling of greatness. And it's an interesting comparison because like it's this I feel like his impulse is the same as Andrew's in Whiplash, but he
Hmm.
doesn't have any authority figure pushing him to do it. It's all coming from inside. And so the movie plays out differently. But I wonder, like, do you think that having that figure pushing you, if you are driven to greatness, like Andrew is, like Loudon and Vision Quest is, do you think you need that J.K. Simmons character to get you there? Or should that be coming from inside if that's what you're trying to pursue?
I do think there's, we don't see the story before he gets to this college. But clearly, he was self motivated to get here. He has the date with whatever the girl's name was, can't remember. But so he goes on this date, and they're talking, and he mentions that, why did you choose this college? Oh, well, it's the best music school in the country. It's like, clearly, this is the best one. That's why I went there. And then he even has more discussions with her where he's like, I'm after greatness. I want to be the best. And he says this. And so I do think there is an element of his character that is self motivated. And I do think, in a way, he is searching for what J.K. Simmons has to offer because he's looking for someone or something to tell him he is the best or to help him become the best. And so there may be an element of does he need J.K. Simmons to get there? That's quite possible. And I could see that. I don't know that that would be the case for everybody, but it does seem to be the case for Andrew, the character in this movie, at least that particular character, because I don't know about the ending. Like at the end, you kind of, it's almost a happy ending in a way, but you do feel like he got somewhere and he is still with J.K. Simmons at the end. So I don't know. It may just be a character dependent thing. What did you think?
Yeah, well, I want to talk a little bit more about the ending, but I think that there is something about him that he really wants that figure. He wants greatness. He's going to push himself, but I think he gets a lot of satisfaction out of that relationship with J.K. Simmons. I think it,
Hmm.
and I don't know in a healthy way. I don't know that it makes him a better musician, even, but I think
Yeah, we don't know.
psychologically he wants that. There's a there's a Nirvana song called "Frances Farmer Will Have Her Revenge on Seattle." I think is the name of the song, but there's a a line in the song that said, "I tried hard to have a father, instead I had a dad," and
Mm,
I'm not sure exactly what Kurt Cobain meant by that. Kurt Cobain's an interesting guy, but
yeah.
um, there's something that line has resonated with me, especially when I was thinking about sports coaches and people like that, where my dad and certainly Andrew's dad in the movie is a supportive, nice, friendly person. And I think that's in many ways better for life. But I think there is a drive that people sometimes have for I want someone to push me. I want someone
Hmm.
to not love me unconditionally, but whose love I have to earn, and then I want to earn it. And if somebody is going to love me unconditionally, then I haven't really achieved anything by them loving me. And so, like, there is sometimes, maybe it's not in everybody, but I think that there can be this real pursuit of that kind of relationship.
And that's a good point to bring up in this movie, particularly because as we get to the end of this movie here, there is that where he almost chooses between the two. And in the after he's done, he realizes that J.K. Simmons put one over on him. He doesn't know the music to this, whatever he's doing. Walks off the stage. His dad comes off, and they embrace. And his dad is like, "All right, let's go." And then he turns around and he goes back to continue playing. To kind of, he's like choosing J.K. Simmons over his dad, who is just ready to welcome him back, ready to just move on, get over this. And I think that's an interesting way to show just how this character has evolved and maybe not evolved. It's almost like he's still searching for the thing and he hasn't found it. And he knows he's not going to get it from his dad or his family or anybody else. And so because he wants this thing so bad, he only sees the possibility through one person, and he ends up going back on stage and kind of almost choosing J.K. Simmons over his family. But I think that's an interesting choice, an interesting way to show that choice.
Yeah, I think that choice is so interesting. And then I think when he's out on stage, it's such an interesting way that it flows, because it's like, okay, they have this reconciliation, so now he's going to perform with him. But then it turns out J.K. Simmons is sabotaging him.
Mm-hmm.
But then he actually sort of starts to kind of embarrass J.K. Simmons. But then in that final moment, it kind of looks like maybe he's trying to just prove how great he is, the Miles Teller character, or maybe he is getting revenge on J.K. Simmons. But as it keeps going, and J.K. Simmons gets involved, it's like at first he's thrown off, like, "What are you doing? You're making a fool of me." But then it's like, "Oh no, let me actually like give you some cues as you're drumming,"
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes clear they are in this together. And what
Yes.
started off as this battle is them actually coming together, and they have a little smile at the very end that seems like it's not like one of them won. I think they're it's sort of
They
saying
both
like,
want.
we are, like, you are now like me, and we are
Mm-hmm.
in this together, kind of. And that doesn't mean we'll like each other, but I recognize that, like, we actually look at the world in the same way.
I think that's an important distinction because it does seem from an outside viewer like this is all personal. Like the attacks J.K. Simmons is making, they're personal attacks. And when Andrew retaliates, it's a personal attack against him. But really, it's almost all business. It's like if this is all about music and getting greatness out of you. And as soon as J.K. Simmons sees in that last scene that he is going for greatness, then he's on board. He's like, it worked. You know, he is true to the character where he will not take personal offense. There's nothing about this that is like, you screwed me over, so I'm going to hold this against you as a grudge. He's over that. He just wants, as he said in the very beginning, to get the best out of somebody. And when he sees that opportunity, he goes for it. And so I think that smile at the end is like a recognition of, yeah, we may hate each other personally, but this is the relationship that's going to work. We need each other for what we were looking for.
And I think in many ways, because Fletcher, the J.K. Simmons characters, has said, like, I never had a Charlie Parker. I never found that one out of the 100. And I think if Andrew can be that one, it validates everything in Fletcher's life. That
Mm-hmm.
everything has been worth it if Andrew can be that one. And if Andrew has achieved greatness because Fletcher pushed him so hard, then that validates everything for him. And so you have this sort of sick symbiotic relationship between them. It's an interesting, and I think what's so interesting about the ending of the movie, though, it's this big climactic performance, and it feels like Andrew is proving himself. So to most moviegoers, it's just a
Mm-hmm.
great, pretty straightforward ending of, it ends with a bang, which is great. It doesn't, it feels like a big climactic ending, but also it feels like a happy ending because Andrew is proving what a great drummer he is. And if
Yep.
that's all you take from it, you feel like, wow, this what a great movie with a happy ending. But I think Andrew is proving that he is a great drummer, but also that he does see the world in the same way as J.K. Simmons, which is not really a happy ending.
Yeah. Well, and J.K. Simmons is potentially getting his reward as well, and having some great student come out of his class, which hasn't happened yet. So it is almost, you could see it as a happy ending for both. I think you want it to be a happy ending for Andrew. I think generally he's the main character, and you kind of want things to turn out well for him. But I think you can see it in multiple ways, which is part of the reason I think this movie is so good and holds up, is because there is some ambiguity there, but you can kind of almost see what you want to see based on the lens you're looking through. And he doesn't really give you a definitive, this is what the movie means. It's almost like whatever you take into this movie, that's what you're going to get out of it. So I like that about this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to add a couple little things that I like structurally about the movie. You mentioned the girl that he goes on a date or two with, and I think that's such an interesting thing because we expect there to be a relationship like that, but
Mm-hmm.
also it doesn't fit in this story that he would have a strong relationship that he cares about. And I think this, like the fact that she's introduced, not just we don't just ignore his romantic life. We introduce a
Yeah,
character, we introduce that relationship, and then he's like, I'm too busy. And then it sort of
I
moves
think
on.
he
And I
picks it
think
up.
that is true to his character.
Well, his relationship is J.K. Simmons. In any other movie, this would be like you could make a romantic movie out of this, like the J.K. Simmons, the Miles Teller character, like those two with their strong personalities. You could make a romance out of those, character archetypes. And I think the girlfriend is almost like becomes where you would think the teacher would be the side relationship, but no, it's with this movie the girlfriend is the side relationship. She's secondary
Hmm.
to everything else. And his real relationship, the person he's courting or pursuing, is J.K. Simmons.
Yeah. The other structural thing that I thought was so interesting here was Miles Teller gets in the car crash, and
Mhm.
and sort of things fall apart, and then he's just sort of passive as an investigator comes, and or a lawyer, but they come and say there have been these complaints about the teacher, and we just want you to testify, or we want to talk to you about what happened. But it's not that he seeks to take him down. These things just sort of happen, and he's just sort of passively like involved in it a little. But it's not, and I think he does talk to them, and I think that's what comes out at the end a little bit. But the point being, you would think normally that you would want your main character to be actively doing the thing to take down their
Mhm.
antagonist. And I
Mhm.
think it's an important choice here that Andrew does not want to take him down. And
Mhm.
he's just sort of, these things are happening. They make sense that that would happen within this world. But he is just sort of passively there as they happen. And I think it would undermine a lot of the movie if he was actively trying to take him down.
Because he doesn't see him as the bad guy in the story. I don't think at any moment does he think he's the bad guy, even though he gets mad and he attacks him physically. I think it's more of just like a lashing out. But he still, they tell him all these things that he does that are wrong, and he could admit, but he doesn't feel that way. Like he still feels like this guy has some value, and what he's doing is good ultimately. Like there's the good outweighs the bad in what he's doing. So that is a good point to make that he like his how he sees him doesn't change throughout the movie. There is one thing he wants, and he eventually gets it, and the passive parts are the parts that change things. That's an
Yep.
interesting way to do it.
Well, I think this is a really great movie that I enjoy. I think it's entertaining, and I think it also invites just a lot of thought about drama, about life. As I understand it, it's less accurate about jazz music itself, but
It's a movie.
it's a movie. But so I really liked it. Now, if we were tasked with remaking it, and a Hollywood studio comes to us and says we want to remake it, okay, here's the thing. If they're asking you to do it for no budget, this was made for a very small budget.
Three
This
million.
is already made for a tiny budget. And it's interesting too, this was produced by Blumhouse, which is
Mm,
Jason Blum mostly does horror films, and they're very, very successful in this whole model of making low budget horror films. They made Get Out, they made a bunch of other, I mean, they've made dozens of other really successful horror films, and they have a whole model of making them for a very low budget, and then recouping their costs and whatnot. And so this is sort of an unusual film that they made, but part of what the thinking was it still fit within their model of making a super low budget film. And in fact, a lot of the crew from the movie The Purge worked on Whiplash
mm,
because they were all sort of ready to go. And there was a lot of interest in, we have our whole career making horror movies. Let's make something that might win some awards.
yeah.
And so there was a lot of interest to do that. But how do you take this question of the no budget remake?
I think that's really hard because this feels like a no budget, and I think Damien Chazelle, even made like a short version of this before this movie came out. Um,
He made a short that is literally just it's one scene from the feature film with a
uh,
different actor playing the Miles Teller role, but still with J.K. Simmons, and it's almost 100% the same as what ends up in the
Same
final
scene.
film.
Yeah, that's interesting. So like he obviously had a vision for this, and I don't know how you make this less of a budget other than cutting out the big name actors. You've got two. big name actors in this, I guess you could cut down on that budget. But this does seem to be made at a very low budget. There's minimal locations here. And I mean, there is, I guess, a group of musicians you're paying to play this. I assume a lot of this music is live and people have to know how to play music. But I don't know. I don't know how you get much more out of this to cut. Like, what would you cut other than just make it shorter? What did you think?
I assume they had to pay Paul Reiser millions of dollars to be in the movie, but he's got that "Mad About You" mansion he needs to pay for. No, I don't
Yeah.
know. I think this was very. I think it was a $3 million budget. I think it was very low budget. If you're going to be making things with actual unions and stuff, you can't really go much cheaper than that. Now, could you make this as a true indie film for a lower budget? You could, without those actors, without quite. But I do think that the film looks really good. But
Yeah.
if you had strong performances and a grittier, less polished look, I think the film would still work. So I guess if you did basically the same thing, but for $200,000 instead of $3 million, and it just didn't look quite as good, I think that would. That's not a very
You
fun
could
answer.
streamline it. It already feels so streamlined. That's the thing. Like, what would you cut? What could you cut from this movie? It seems like everything in this movie is like at the bare minimum of what you would need for this movie to work.
I
Could you
mean,
cut
one
out
thought is, do
relationships?
you
Maybe.
literally never leave the room? I mean,
Yeah.
if you really just reshape the story a little bit, like a play, so it's not all in like one. It's not necessarily in one time frame, but all the scenes take place as people are coming into this practice room. I think you could restructure the story to do that, and I think that would be a little bit different. Other than that, though, I'm not sure what else you would do. The one other thought I had was if you go the opposite direction and you
Yeah.
want to spend a lot more money, and I don't think that would improve anything. I think if you saw if you just had the money to burn and you wanted to show like living a fancy life but still only caring about the music, I guess like that could add an element to it. That if I don't think that would be an improvement, but I think he's living the Wolf of Wall Street life, but all he really cares about is jazz greatness. That could
Yeah.
add a dimension to it if you just needed to burn that money.
I think you could potentially make it a little longer if you wanted to. Maybe you could extend some of these scenes. Maybe you give more background to some of these characters. I don't know what that makes it better though, because I feel like it's really the tightness of this story is why it works really well.
Okay, so that's a tricky one. But if we were to make this as a family movie, which is definitely going to be really easy with this one, all the same racial and sexual epithets need to stay in there, but
Play it
make
there.
it a family movie.
That's see that I the J.K. Simmons character is the reason this is not a family movie. Everything else you could almost get away with and just keep it the same. But that character, I don't know. So to do this story without such an extreme character, maybe I- this is just where my mind went was you make this like a animated movie, but not like a Pixar animated, like the like Nickelodeon in the '90s animated, where it's a little
Mm.
more raw and so it doesn't feel polished the animation like a raw animation style with and you could stick it with kids and you could have a teacher where the audience being more kids, they look at this teacher as like, oh, this guy's an idiot. And you can have like kids make fun of him, but he like blows up. And maybe you do with the animation, do some funny character work with how he explodes. And it could be pretty interesting that way. And maybe he doesn't say swear words, but he says other funny words that kids think are funny. I think you could maybe do that with this character where everybody's just on board that this is a bad guy, but they're stuck in school. So what can they do about it?
Yeah, I think that was what I was thinking too. I also had the thought of like you do like the Peanuts adults where like you can't even hear what they're like. It's just sort
Oh
of
yeah,
garbled
Mumble.
what the adults are saying. Um, but I guess the next step with that I was thinking about was what is the story that we're watching. I feel like if like children watching a story about a young man's pursuit of greatness at all, forsaking everything else.
Hmm.
That's a little bit of a weird message. Um, maybe that's what you want to do. But I also just thought if you wanted to take the basic premise or basic idea of this, and you instead settled in on, what if we had it about like the friendships in the class, and it was sort of like the culture of this band and the kids in there, and then there's this crazy teacher who blows up and whatever, but it's really those relationships in the class, as opposed to the singular pursuit of greatness.
Like School of Rock, but instead of Jack Black, you have J.K. Simmons. What would that?
Yes.
How would that play
Yeah.
out?
And then center it more on the kids, probably.
Yeah, that could potentially work. There's something about kids, being in a situation they all know it's a tough situation, but just rallying together and commiserating in their misery. There's something to that.
Well, and I think for kids too, like, I think a lot of times kids perceive their teachers as being mean and blowing up, even if, like, to an objective observer, it wouldn't be what J.K. Simmons is doing here. Like, that might be like how the kids might be perceiving it as blowing up at them. And
Yeah,
I think I think that idea is very relevant to kids, whether or not it's the actual kind of language and ferocity that he brings to it.
right. Yeah, that would work.
Okay, but then what about if we had to remake it as a TV show, either like an ongoing series or a limited series? What would you do there?
I do think this movie doesn't lend itself naturally to a TV show as well as some of the other movies we've talked about. This story does feel complete at the end of this. I guess you could potentially see where the story goes afterwards. Now that at the end of the movie, they're together, they've just performed in front of these people. Does Andrew get cast or chosen to play at the New York, whatever it was, whatever the big band is? Did J.K. Simmons go up? Do they still retain their personal relationship? There may be something there. Maybe J.K. Simmons starts teaching other people and you add more people into this mix. I don't know. I don't know that that would be something I'd be so interested in. I don't know. I had a really hard time thinking about where this would go. It just feels like it's done. Did you see this going further?
I didn't really think about it going further. I didn't think that that was the way to go with it. But what I did think, I think this would benefit from teasing it out longer. And I
Mm,
think that if you broke this up, not turning it into a sitcom or an ongoing show, but I think if we saw this over 8 episodes, I think that could be really interesting, because I think the idea of, you have the whole first episode about, is he going to make it into the band? And it's this sort of back and forth, is he going to make it in? And then but twist, once he makes it in, it's terrible. And the teacher's mean. Like, that would be really interesting if that was the twist ending of the first episode. And then we have, the whole going to the concert, getting in the car crash. That could be an episode. And like, I think some of these things, especially that relationship with Fletcher, I think teasing that out over a longer period of time might strengthen it, actually, just because you'd see more aspects to the relationship, and you'd get more of a sense of, well, here are the times when he's being friendly, here are the times when he's being abusive, and we get, not necessarily better, but we get a different perspective on what
hmm.
that relationship looks like, and we get a little bit more time to see the Miles Teller character, like, adapt to that and what that means. So I think I would still largely begin and end in the same places, but I think try to have, each one of these 10-minute sections of the film be a whole episode of a TV series.
Yeah, because that first act is maybe 10, 15 minutes at the most. You don't get much time of him not being in the band. It moves pretty quick. So if you drag that out, there's definitely something you could do there to make a. I don't know if it'd be more interesting or not. I mean, it could be, potentially it wouldn't be. So, but there's definitely you could expand on that world a little bit.
I think if you saw, like, you could have the one standout episode as like Andrew's home for Thanksgiving or whatever, and he's having these
Oh
conversations with his.
yeah,
I mean, I think that's such an interesting,
that's a fun one.
like, you pull one little episode out of the flow, but it then reflects back on everything else that we're seeing, and I think that could be a really fun way to
Yeah,
take the story.
Yeah, that could work.
So, of those remake ideas, are any of them an improvement on the film? Which would you most like to see? What do you think?
To me, I don't think any of these would be an improvement. I think this film is really solid as is. Um, the, I mean, if they did a show about that, like you're saying, that could be interesting. There's potential there. I might be interested in seeing that. What about you?
I think that's the only one that I think would be worth making. I mean, I don't think there's much about this that really fits with a family film that well,
Hmm.
and the budget. It's all. I mean, it's already no budget, and I don't think you could do much with more money. So I think the only thing would be to tease out the story over a longer period of time. So there you go. I mean, those are some really interesting remake ideas. I think for a great film, Whiplash. I wanted to ask you though, before we finish up, what do you think about um, being accurate to the material that you're covering? So there's thinking of Vision Quest about wrestling. I don't know if you've seen
Mhm.
other movies that involve wrestling
What
or
was the one with
movies.
the Foxcatcher
Oh,
where they did
Foxcatcher,
wrestling?
yeah. I mean, and there are movies, there are TV shows. There's a recent TV show, The Pit, that
No,
is incredibly accurate to how like an ER actually works, or it's it's
that's a
not
good.
necessarily how a normal shift on an ER works or in an ER works, but everything that's happening in there is very accurate. Is that important? Is that not essential but really cool when you can do that? Or should you really emphasize just storytelling and not care that much about the strict accuracy to the field? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good thought because I do think it's ultimately storytelling. Even if you had an accurate, so if you were to go into a hospital and just start filming, that'd be so boring. Even if it's 100% accurate, so there is the storytelling element at its core is essential. But if you can do it accurate, I guess the pit is really big, and i've I haven't really watched too much of that, but knowing that it is so accurate and people seem to love it. But then I go back to like Scrubs, which I love Scrubs, and I know that's not accurate, and yet I still have a really fun time with it. So I don't know that the accuracy ruins anything for me, except maybe if you are professional in this field. So if you know and you just cannot get over it, that may be part of it, but that's going to be a small population of the, like a small percentage of the population. So I don't know that I have a strong take on that. Do you have one?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think sometimes your original twist on a topic could be that you're going to do it super accurately, and I think that's oh, we've seen a lot of doctor movies before, but our or doctor TV shows, but our twist is going to be that we're super accurate. That could be
Mhm.
that could be worth doing. I saw a film last year called Warfare, which was really interesting about one tiny little battle in Iraq, and part
Mm.
of the unique pitch of that movie was we are going to be as close to accurate as possible in terms of what exactly happened in this real life battle. And not I don't think that that's required of a movie, but it could be a uniquely interesting thing about your individual movie. Um, but I saw a video where a jazz musician was talking about Whiplash, and he was annoyed with a number of things, and he was like, "Look, when they go to the jazz bar that's supposed to be playing jazz, it's like it sounds like this," and he plays what is in the movie, and then he's like, "That's ridiculous. Listen to what I taped at a real jazz bar in New York City last night," and he plays a tape that he recorded, and I'm like, I guess that sounds different to me. That's identical. I don't know.
Yeah. It's
And
you make a choice as a director, like people aren't going to notice this and this works better, so I don't know.
yeah, I think people who care about that field are going to be outspoken about things that they don't like about it, or potentially things that they do like about it. And maybe in this sort of world where media is like very splintered, maybe appealing to one group that is really going to love that because it accurately reflects their profession or something. Like maybe that is a way to get your work seen by a group.
Yeah.
The trouble is, if what you're selling yourself on is complete accuracy, as soon as you break with that complete accuracy at all, it's a problem. Whereas if you
And it's
say
gonna
we're story first, we're in this world, but we know it's not going to be completely accurate, that's a you can get by a lot with that. But as soon as you're saying we're completely accurate, then people are going to be nitpicking everything.
Yeah, if you sacrifice story in the name of accuracy, I think then your show just loses interest in what do you really have. You don't, even a documentary has a structure to it. And if you're sacrificing that structure just to keep it accurate, I don't know that that's going to pay off in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think Whiplash does a really good job of being story first. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
a jazz musician. I don't know how accurate these things are, but I would say it plays into the strength of the story. It really works for the story, and it gives enough sense of accuracy to somebody. Like, I don't know exactly what it would accurately look like, but I'm sure you could make something where even I would say that seems wrong. I can't believe that they
Yeah,
do it that way. So you need to be
close enough.
accurate enough for the general public.
Yeah, for your audience. And where would you say? So this is Damien Chazelle. He hasn't made that many movies. Where would this rank for you for his movies? I think he does a lot of like real life based stuff. Is this your favorite one that he's done for Chazelle?
He's done this one and La La Land and Babylon and
And First
another.
Man,
Oh,
First Man,
First
right?
Man, yeah.
Which is kind
Um,
of, yeah,
and he did another one before this that I think is a real tiny indie film that I have not seen.
yeah. I hadn't seen that one, but I've seen the other ones.
I like this one the best. I think
You do.
that this works the best as a movie. I enjoyed La La Land, but it's not my favorite. Babylon, I did not really think totally worked, but it
Mm,
Babylon was full of really interesting things, and I think that like I think Babylon had a lot of really interesting scenes and ideas in it, but I'm not sure it totally worked for me as a movie. First Man,
yeah,
I really respected, but it's so depressing. I feel
so
like
boring.
Whiplash is my favorite.
Whiplash is a good one. I thought his best movie to me was Babylon. It just felt like he was taking these big swings and really going for it. And I don't know, something about the way he directs, it just feels really big to me. And so I like when he kind of opens it up and does this really big story and these really big worlds. I liked La La Land too. Although I just can't deny that this Whiplash is just really great movie. I do prefer when Chazelle goes a little bigger and just takes more swings, adds more stuff to it. I don't know. I think he's fun. He's really good at that. So
Yeah, I'll have to go check out Babylon again. And
the
yeah,
first man
great.
is
And
enough.
I think any of those films are definitely worth a watch. And there we have it. Thanks for joining us for this episode of How to Make Films and Influence People. Check us out at howtomakefilmspodcast.com, and we'll see you next time.